Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, How Intelligent Workflow Engines Simplify PACS Upgrades and Replacements. Thank you for being here. This webinar is being presented by DataFirst. First and foremost, I want to make sure that all of you can see our screen and hear us. So any of our attendees that are in here today, if you could just take a moment and go ahead and raise your hand, it would give me some insight as to see, letting me know that you can see us and hear us. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Antonio, Kyle, thank you all again for taking the time to participate. We want to make this event as interactive as we possibly can. Therefore, throughout the course of today's webinar, feel free to post a question either in the chat or in the live Q&A. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode, but when we get to the end of the webinar, we will take a moment to address your questions live. In addition to that, if we can't get to your questions live, we will make sure that we obviously have an opportunity to follow up with you as well. Today's event is being recorded and will be made available on demand. But with no further ado, I'd like to get things rolling with a quick introduction of, before I hand it over, just two quick introductions. First and foremost, we'll have Bo Jones, President and CEO of DataFirst, with some opening remarks and hanging around for live Q&A as well. Bo has more than 30 years of healthcare IT and entrepreneurial leadership and is driving the DataFirst machine as the president and CEO. And then when Bo hands it over, he'll hand it over to Herman Osterwick, who's a seasoned imaging informatics trainer. He has written books in expertise in PACS, DICOM, HL7, and it's a real pleasure to have him as the featured presenter today. So with no further ado, and for some opening remarks, I'd like to hand things over to Bo Jones, CEO at DataFirst. Bo?
Hey, Dennis, thanks much. And well, I don't know how I feel about the 30 years at the helm here, but certainly have seen a lot over the last couple of decades, and certainly honored to have an old friend here, Herman, joining us for our presentation today. We connected actually at SIM. It's a lot like meeting the mayor. You can't get a word in without somebody stopping by to say hello. Herman knows everybody, and I thought it would be a great opportunity, given his tenure in the industry, to come on board and really help talk about some of the ways that DataFirst is utilizing the Silverback Workflow Engine to drive a better and more efficient process within the enterprise imaging space. And we were just talking about ideas, and certainly on one end of the scale, this is a router. On the other end of the scale, it's a very comprehensive and intelligent workflow engine. And we were just trying to think through what might be some interesting topics to bring up in a webinar. And we started talking about really the inflection point that we see when folks change from PACS systems to a new PACS system, which, if you've been in the industry for any period of time, obviously that is a regular occurrence, typically on a 6 to 8 year cycle is what we see. So we really wanted to leverage the value and technology proposition around Silverback to prepare for those moments when facilities decide to make a transition from one vendor to the next, and how the interoperability engine can really drive efficiency through that process. So with that, Herman, I'd like you to take it away, and thanks again for being part of our presentation today.
Yeah, thank you, Bo. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned SIM, because that was really the impetus of this presentation. I met one of my students, and when he told me that he's gonna replace his PACS, because I asked him how he's doing, and he said, I'm gonna go live with another PACS system in another 2 or 3 months. And I said, oh, I'm sorry for you. And he said, no, don't worry, because it's really as simple as a flip of a switch. And I thought, we really should share that story, because I'm sure that a lot of people are faced with the problem of how to migrate or how to switch, very quickly and very efficiently from one PACS to another PACS, or actually to update it. So, thank you both for the introduction. Like he said, I've been in the business for quite a while. I got some couple of awards, and I focus currently on AI connectivity. But let's go a little bit talking about why would you want to replace and upgrade your PACS system. A little bit of background, and of course we have hardware obsolescence, and a lot of hospitals are now facilitating enterprise imaging, finally. Very slowly, but there's ophthalmology, and of course, there's the pathology is pushing the boundaries, and they want to get on the digital bandwagon. There's quite a few new standards. DICOM Web is the web-based implementation of DICOM, and suddenly opens up a whole new world because in the past you need to have this web server and some other piece of hardware, but now you directly can natively come for your PACS or the VNA, and you can distribute these images any way you want. It's almost like an eye opener. I was deploying a PACS system as a volunteer in Uganda, and after we deployed the system, he took the images. I called to the chairman and I said, "Open up your phone." He said, "Okay, tapping this and this," and he said, "I can see the images on my phone." Right. So DICOM Web really facilitates the distribution very easily for images, and then of course Fire, even although they're still struggling a little bit with different releases, but I think Fire will eventually make an impact where we can easily access what we call resources for patient information, for study information. So it's really changing the whole architecture. And of course, if to be able to use that, we need to change the PACS system. Cloud hosting, cost savings. There's a lot of security breaches, ransomware events, and having a cloud-based PACS system. If you can rely on the thousands and thousands of people that these cloud companies have available for security, instead of having maybe a 10 or 20 or a handful or maybe even less security people in your own organization. I know it's of course as a cloud and being in the infrastructure, it's a little bit higher visibility, but definitely there's better mechanisms by the vendors to provide security mechanisms. Software support, browsers. I do some work in FDA approvals, and I get quite a few calls that say, well, listen, we were based on Internet Explorer, but that's not supported anymore, or we have a problem with that. And so different operating systems. So we need to upgrade the software as well. And then, of course, image processing and AI. PACS systems were not architectured to facilitate AI. They're trying to build it in, kind of squeeze it in with marketplaces, but really, really want to re-architect your system to be able to use this efficiently and effectively. And the last but not least, there's a lot of hospitals that are consolidating. They acquire clinics, they acquire multiple hospitals, they consolidate, they merge. We have different PACS systems, and we want to migrate the data and switch over from one to the other vendor. In some cases, when hospitals are consolidating, one hospital might have a corporate agreement with one of the big vendors. That seems to be another reason to switch with vendors as well. So a little bit of background. So people are upgrading and replacing PACS systems. And if you think about the average lifespan of a PACS system, maybe 6 to 8 years, and if you think about maybe 6,000 hospitals in the United States, I would say that at any point in time, there are probably 500 to 1,000 hospitals. They're moving, they're doing this stuff. And so how can we be much more effective in that? So the challenge, of course, when you change PACS is training. Training is the number one issue. I had a good friend of mine when I used to work at Kodak, and he said, Herman, the best training is not having to need any training. And he was, a head of training. But I can understand what he's meaning. What he means. You want to be able to go up to a hospital, to a workstation in the hospital, and be able to use the system. It has to be intuitively. It has to be easy, and that's a big differentiation between different PACS systems. I talked with some PACS administrators, and I said, "How do you like your new PACS?" He said, "Well, it's okay, but tell you what, instead of having to spend an hour with a radiologist, now I can spend 10 minutes and he got it, he gets it." And it's not necessarily because some radiologists are more used to new technology, but it's more intuitive. Now, data migration, normalization. If you have two hospitals that want to share the data in the central VNA. And hospital 1 has the series description that were created by, let's say, a Siemens CT, and the other one has a GE with a different series description, different protocols. Your hanging protocols are going to be messed up. So what we want to do, we want to normalize the data. We used to call it tech morphing, so changing them. Again, that's another very important reason. Routing, not only routing, we call intelligent routing / workflow engines can really have an important role. Of course, the resources, when you're going to change from one to the other PACS system, you need to reconcile information. I was talking with another good friend of mine at SIM, and he said, "So what happened after you moved your PACS system?" And she said, "Well, we had about 1,000 studies that had to be reconciled because they were not recognized." And they said, "What do you do?" "Well, it took me 3 months. Every morning I come in from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock to reconcile." So you need to count on resources to make sure that this to change over that it really that you really can reconcile all these studies. Customization configuration. Here's another very good thing. One of the hospitals, they moved from one to the other PACS system, and they found out they had this very relatively old system out there. It was a floral system. And the worklist query did not quite work. There were actually some custom programming because the way they couldn't really query on that modality. So after they changed it over, they said, "Oh, remember we had this script that we wrote 5 years ago, and now that's not part of the PACS anymore." So customization configuration, sometimes that shows up when you do the conversion. So some of the challenges, but let's talk about how do we get this I call this flip a switch. Flip a switch. How can we go live, and how can we just very easily flip the switch and go from one to the other PACS system, and then all of these sources and destinations automatically be redirected. And that's really what we want to focus on. So traditional switch over. If you look at the top, right? On top, you have the old PACS system, the old PACS system, all of these modalities are connected. And if you have a large institution, there could be quite a few. It would not be more than a handful. It would be 50, 60, 70, or hundreds of those. So we need to reassign all these IP addresses, port numbers, and AE titles, because that's how we find the destinations, not only for the workplace, but also for the store and some of the other DICOM services. You need to reassign them to the new PACS, right? So blue becomes red, right? And then after we reassign them to the new PACS, then hopefully the images will all be available on the workstations and so on. So how do we do that? Well, what we do, the solution would be have a proxy for multiple modality work lists. Now, I would say the proxy for multi-modality worklist, that feature actually exceeds the usefulness beyond just changing PACS systems, because today we might actually schedule the procedures in Epic or CERN or whatever EMI you have, but then some of the enterprise imaging capabilities like ophthalmology, digital pathology, they might not be able to schedule those in the EMI. So they might have their own practice management system. They might have an old-fashioned broker / router. So proxy for multiple modality worklist, right? Having a workflow engine provider, extremely useful, because again, actually I was talking with my ex-student about how he does that. He said, "Well, I make it so easy for the biomedical engineers that they know there's only one source for the work list, only one, right? This is the workflow engine, so they don't need to have to go figure out what are 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the destination? Where does my work list come from, right?" And in addition, sometimes these work list sources, they change. Sometimes they have an ultrasound that is used Monday and Tuesday for cardiology, and then OBGYN for Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday maybe as a backup for radiology. So we have different sources of work list. So having a proxy is very, very useful. We also have one standard normalized destination for the store, for pulling the images back by retrieve. right? This is easy to add, install, and manage. One standardized, normalized destination instead of having multiple. Another thing that you have with these workflow engines, you can also have a cache. Now, what is a cache? Typically, they store the images and they might have a couple of terabytes there. And so if you want to, let's say, have all the mammography images read by a mammographer that is being outsourced, for example, instead of having to go all the way to the PACS or the VNA and then route them back, you might as well directly route them out of your cache from the workflow engine. So it becomes, there's no burden on their PACS because interpretation today is a commodity, right? What I mean with that is like the administrators go shop for where they can get the cheapest interpretation done, right? And it doesn't even have to be necessarily within your own hospital. I'm actually working in Colorado, building a cabin there. I fell from a ladder, so I thought I broke my hand, so I go to the clinic and I said, okay, well, once the lady that helped me, she said, I'll be back in 15 minutes. So they came back 15 minutes, look at the iCloud and look where there was a fracture on my hand. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Where's it being read? And she was part of a clinic that, part of the big chain of hospitals here in the Dallas Metroplex. She said, this is being read in California. I said, oh, that's interesting, right? So why is that? Well, I guess it's cheaper, less expensive and faster, right? So interpretation is commodity, and to be able to move these images and send them to where they need it, eventually, it's very, very, very easy. Central security management. Yeah, if you want to have an external connection, instead of having to deal with multiple VPNs, one central security. And I'm sure you really make your security people in the hospital very, very happy instead of having to manage all these different connections. Manage routing to AI applications, very important. And then one of the things that when I talked with my students, they said they really like to have a centralized troubleshooting point. And so having this workflow engine that allows Wireshark to be installed and allows troubleshooting and also having a little dashboard to do a data analysis. Extremely useful. He was just telling me that he had to troubleshoot another transfer syntax problem because the ultrasound, did some kind of compression and was not understood by the radiology. Anyway, you can get the idea. And of course, failover in case of security breach for testing applications. So what is it that we would do? So we have a workflow manager. And a workflow manager, you can call it maybe middleware or something. And so this workflow manager basically is the source for all these modalities. That's where they go, right? And not only for that, all these modalities for the store modality work variety, it actually is a proxy for the multiple modality work list. And so what happens if you want to switch from one to the other path, right? You flip the switch. You go from yellow to red. Right? So very, very easy. So, and this is the use case that I talked with with the PACS administrator student, and he didn't want to. Kind of, you have to keep it generic because he said, "Well, we don't want to tell too much about the hospital for security reasons." I appreciate that, but so this is a new use case. So it's a major provider in the Midwest, and they have 40 main hospitals, 25 affiliated clinics, 450 clinics, 1,500 modalities. Can you imagine 1,500 modalities, right? And 300 cardiology modalities, right? 5 different PACS systems and a central VNA. So they installed this router, this workflow engine. Of course, what they did, because typically when you have to change the IP address port number AE title for modality, you have to call the service engineer. No, having to do that 1,500 times, right? And all the same time is almost not feasible. So, as you know, there's regular, preventive maintenance. And he said, okay, next PM, I want you to configure for a IP address port number 8 either. So there's no extra cost, no extra effort to be. And it took about 6 months because there's a typical PM, period anyway. So after doing it for 6 months, everything was connected to the workflow engine. And this workflow engine had also a cache on 5 terabyte. And so all of the teleradiology studies could be directly sent and fetched from the router. Right? Not all of them, actually 80%. 20% of the time, he has to deal with some changes. So instead of a big bang, he would switch, and it was in this case for a cardiology PACS over 200 modalities, but switched over in 7 minutes at 7 a.m. normal working hours. So Monday morning, he came in at 7 o'clock. He told everybody to hang out there for a couple of minutes, and after 10 minutes, it switched it on. I thought this was so impressive that I wanted to share the video. Right? So be able to do that. And virtualizing all this destination and so I think that's some success story that we can all learn from. So you don't have to worry about PACS upgrades, changes, whatever. So what is the intelligent workflow router do? It's a PACS. It's middleware. Standardized connectivity modality workers to query and tree, right? Centralized security management. You can do troubleshooting analytics, and you can basically flip a switch or any upgrade, any operations. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I wanted to share that with you. I'm sure you probably have some questions. So I'm going to go give it back to Dennis. Dennis, do we have any questions about?
Thank you, Herman. Appreciate that. In lieu of, pardon me, in lieu of asking a question, we actually have a polling question for you that I'm now going to launch here. It has to do with which best describes your current situation. I'll give everybody a moment. It should be popped onto the screen. If you could take a moment to answer that would be great. In the meanwhile, if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and put that into the Q&A and or to the chat, and we'll gladly take a moment and address that question. And meanwhile, we've got our polling question up for you. And if you could just take a moment, we'll leave this up for about another 20 seconds. Again, thank you, Bo and Herman, for being a part of the webinar, and all of our attendees as well. We look forward to additional educational events that are coming up as we head into what we'll call RSNA season as well. In the meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. So, Herman, we do have a question. Can this be deployed in VM HA pairs? I'm not exactly sure what that means. Can this?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Yeah, Scott, you can probably jump in here as well. But if the question is, do we deploy in a high availability environment? The answer is every time. It's inherently part of our solution. There was a day that when we were launching Silverback, initially we gave the option as to whether or not a customer wanted to have a high availability, and there was an upcharge for that. But we quickly realized that given the criticality strategically and from an architectural standpoint of where these systems were being inserted, Herman, you mentioned the modalities coming into our platform. We have a system where 1,200 modalities are coming in, right? So that's operationally critical. So we just no longer gave customers the option to do high availability. Every solution goes out with a high availability, what we refer to as an active environment, right? Just we can tolerate zero downtime. Customers can tolerate zero downtime. It absolutely can be deployed in a virtualized environment as well. It's eminently comprehensive and flexible based on the environment you're deploying to. Scott, anything else?
Just to add in, as far as nuts and bolts, we typically deploy with a pair of virtual servers. Most of our customers put the database on a separate server. Sometimes it's dedicated to just the database. Sometimes it's shared. We're flexible with a lot of solutions, but HA, like Bo said, is critical for where we desire to place our workflow engine. It's important that we've got a high availability solution.
Thank you, Bo, and also Scott. From another attendee, Sally, can the workflow send the information to multiple endpoints?
Unlimited. It's a platform's unlimited, both in terms of the number of inbounds as well as outbounds. There was a time again where we looked or explored limiting that, right, and somehow charging for once you reached 100 outbounds, and we just basically took all the gates off of the product. Our intent is for you to use it at whatever capacity your facility desires based on the strategic objectives of the deployment, but there are no limitations, both inbound and outbound.
Yeah, and I think if you kind of use that, that's actually another good good reason for the workflow engine, because I find that a lot of PACS systems have limited capability, their own routing capabilities. For example, you might have to send images to the PACS first, and then they will have to send it to the VNA or to the cloud. If you can centralize it in your workflow engine and directly, send it to the PACS and a VA and maybe a backup copy to the cloud, that's much more effective. And then, of course, you can have additional rules for, let's say, okay, but by the way, we do the thin slices to the 3D reconstruction, to the whatever the TRA-con, whatever it is. And we want to have these kind of images based on the CS description go to an AI platform. So basically, you really can configure where the images are going to go. So between high availability to make sure that you have, redundancy, and also the flexibility to route it to multiple locations. Certainly, you're not bound anymore by the limitations of the PACS routing capabilities, and you don't have to go through the PACS first and then go. I found actually interesting. I found that if that happens, we first go to the PACS and then that to the VNA, for example. Apparently, there is sometimes discrepancy. So we got actually solutions that say, okay, let's pull the PACS and let's pull the VNA, and I see there's any differences and reconcile the differences. That really became kind of complicated. So we know that a single thread goes to different destinations, and we know because each destination, when the destination receives it, it will give an acknowledgement back what it received it. So if something goes wrong and if there's discrepancy, you would know that right away at the workflow engine, and then having a dashboard, you can actually try to fix it right away, right there at that spot. Again, with much better tools than a lot of modern PACS systems have. So it's really it's almost like a administrative dashboards.
Yes. A common response that we get after a week or two of installation, right, is we become a PACS administrator's core application that they're checking in the morning, checking in the evening, and in that middle space, we are alerting that there's a failure, where the failure is, how to resolve that failure to the phone, right? So it is giving you constant visibility from one seat. For those customers or IDNs that have multiple router deployments, we actually aggregate all of those routers into a single seat so that you can manage, deploy, configure, and resolve conflicts from one seat, being able to navigate to upwards of, well, again, an unlimited number, but it allows you access into a single screen, looking at a particular router that might be deployed, or a number of routers that might be deployed over an entire IDN enterprise, and being able to manage them. That was quite unique for the Silverback application, and it actually was created specifically for I'm trying to remember the company that we did this for initially, Xperity, that has over 2,000 urgent care centers across the country. And they needed a way of managing 2,000 routers from one seat, both in terms of deploying, configuring, and managing. And that became very unique to the DataFirst/Silverback portal from a management standpoint.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Herman, for addressing another question, attendees. It's been brought to my attention that the questions logging into the chat, there's a little bit of an issue. So if you do have a question, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. And again, if we do not have time to address your question during the webinar, we will make sure that we do follow up offline with you. That said, we have another question from Rick. Is there an HL7 interface / router?
Yep, Rick, thanks for the question. I'm glad somebody asked it. We actually just launched a fully and completely integrated HL7 engine within our application that allows you to manage much in the way that we manage DICOM traffic, and the look and the feel of it has exactly the same look and feel on the HL7 side. Our CTO, Christian Warren, really wanted to kind of demystify the whole world of HL7, which I had known nothing about. But if you know how to manage the DICOM traffic, it's exactly the same within the HL7 world, and it's a perfect integration between the two components. So thanks for the question. And our product, just as a reference point, is segmented really into kind of three segments. Think of them as small, medium, and large. We don't modularize and reduce features. We just basically have a smaller platform, which is Silverback View for just basic routing functionality. Silverback Enterprise is everything minus the HL7, and then Silverback Pro is effectively everything Silverback Enterprise with the HL7 engine added. Some folks already have an HL7 solution, so we just remove that element out. Some people need a simpler, kinder, gentler HL7 solution, of which you find, of course, in Pro. Thank you for the question, by the way, Rick.
There's a follow-up to that question of how do you charge for HL7 interfaces?
You know, we're trying to figure that out right now. It's an unlimited interface, which is a little nerve-wracking for me, going, okay, where are the parameters on that going to be? But right now, we are, you know, one of the things that we're very passionate about, and it's interesting, everybody that works at DataFirst has worked at larger OEM companies, right? So we've kind of taken what we don't like in some of these larger organizations and brought what we feel is a better way to operate. And our goal at DataFirst is and has always been, over the last 28 years, to redefine what it means to be a partner. We don't just throw a product over the fence, say good luck with it, but we come alongside you effectively with an unlimited amount of support and service that allows us to actually work beside you, configuring your system, managing your system with you. And as such, we've extended that same environment over to the HL7, where there isn't currently a limitation in the number of interfaces that we're deploying. That may change if we get an account that says, hey, I've got 100 interfaces. But right now, our goal is really to remove any of those barriers to entry to utilizing our product. I see that Dave wants me to keep it unlimited. All right, I can do that for a period of time, but like I said, if somebody challenges us to do 1,000 interfaces, I may have to reconsider charging a small fee for those individual interfaces outside, let's say 100.
Thank you, Bo. Thanks for addressing the question. There's a couple questions that are throughout. Some of them are comments on competitors that have some capabilities. I think that it's important to note that Herman is providing us an overview of the overall concept and things to consider from his point of view. But because the question's kind of posed, what do you think are some of the key differentiators between DataFirst and its the competitive entities that are out there?
So I have often used this term in talking with clients, right? What I think makes us really unique and special are the 3 Ps: our people, our product, and our processes. And it's the combination of all of those things that make us, I think, a company to explore doing business with us. We've never lost a single customer in the Silverback world. That's a powerful statement to make. I would challenge you to talk to anyone that's using the Silverback and ask about our platform. I think we have the best in terms of the way it was architected, which, by the way, was born out of 28 years of doing data migrations. We do upwards of 350 migrations a year for a variety of OEM partners. So our engine is that initially Silverback was only and exclusively available to the DataFirst engineers in the course of performing their data migrations. And we've expanded that, and ultimately customers started asking us to leave that engine behind after a migration was done. And we found very quickly that we had an interoperability workflow engine that drove tremendous value for clients in a more persistent state after the migration was done. So this thing was baptized out of 25 years of doing migration. That coupled with our desire to kind of redefine what it means to be a partner with an entire team of 48 people coming around you to support you in some of the most challenging imaging enterprise challenges that you're going to find in your daily network of operation. The clients that have us love us. And quite frankly, those are the people that we rely on providing testimonies as to why we're better, why I think we're better in terms of our deliverable when compared to the Laurel Bridges or the DICOM systems. All very great companies. We just have a different approach in terms of how we want to work with our particular clients.
Thank you, Bo. Everybody, we are at the time limit end of our webinar today, virtual event, and really appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Bo. This concludes the event. In the event that you have a question that did not get answered, we'll make sure that we follow up with you offline. When you do leave the virtual event today, there will be a brief survey. If you can kindly just take a moment, fill out the information there. It greatly helps us to scope these in the future. Thanks again, everybody. And we'll be back with you soon for our next educational webinar. Thank you.
Thanks.